Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. Azerbaijan says it has liberated 13 more villages in the Karabakh region from the Armenian occupation. President Ilham Aliyev said Armenia has violated the ceasefire by using heavy artillery on Azeri residential areas. He said Azerbaijan's army retaliated befittingly and liberated several settlements. Afghanistan's former Prime Minister and Hizb-e-Islami leader Bulletin HEKMATYAR has arrived in Pakistan. The Afghan leader has met Foreign Minister Mahmood Qureshi in Islamabad. He is also scheduled to meet President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan during his three-day visit. Pakistan's Foreign Office said HEKMATYAR will discuss the Afghan peace process among other matters during the meetings. The United States has dismissed Taliban's accusations of violating the Doha peace deal. US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said unfounded charges of violation and inflammatory rhetoric did not advance peace. He said that belief that violence must escalate to win concessions at the negotiating table is very risky. The number of global COVID-19 infections is approaching 40 million, with more than 1.1 million deaths. India's infections tally has topped 7.5 million, with nearly 56,000 new cases and 579 deaths overnight. In Pakistan, 5 people lost their lives to the virus since yesterday, taking the toll to 6,659. And in tennis, Russian third seed Andrei Rublev beats Croatia's Borna Coric 7-6 and 6-4 to lift the St. Petersburg Open trophy. With this victory, Rublev has joined Novak Djokovic as the only man to win the most single titles this year. These are the top stories. News in detail coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We start from Azerbaijan, which says it has liberated 13 more villages in the Karabakh region from the Armenian occupation. President Ilham Aliyev says Armenia has violated the ceasefire by using heavy artillery on Azeri residential areas. Aliyev says Azerbaijan's army retaliated befittingly and liberated several settlements. Both sides have accused each other of violating the new truce in the disputed NAGORNO-KARABAKH region. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres condemned attacks from both sides and urged them to abide by the humanitarian truce. Earlier, Azerbaijan said its security forces shot down another Armenian warplane, the second in as many days. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has accused the US, Russia and France of providing military support to Armenia. Now, more than 700 people have been killed in the fighting since it broke out on the 27th of September. Meanwhile, Afghanistan's former Prime Minister and Hizb-e-Islami leader Bulletin HEKMATYAR has arrived in Pakistan. The Afghan leader has met Foreign Minister Mahmood Qureshi in Islamabad. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Office said HEKMATYAR will also meet President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan. The Foreign Office said he will also call on the Chairman of the Senate, Sadiq Sanjrani. It said HEKMATYAR's visit will provide an opportunity for the exchange of views on the Afghan peace process and strengthening bilateral ties. Now, Pakistan has always backed a comprehensive political settlement through an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process. Also, the U.S. has dismissed Taliban's accusations of violating the Doha peace deal. U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said unfounded charges of violations and inflammatory rhetoric do not advance peace. Khalilzad said the belief that violence must escalate to win concessions at the negotiating table is very risky. He pointed out, although violence in Helmand has decreased, violence remains high in the country overall. Khalilzad said high levels of violence can threaten the peace process. Earlier, the Taliban warned Washington of consequences if it does not stop bombing areas other than the combat zones in Afghanistan. Moving on now, Israel and Bahrain have formally signed a joint communique in Manama to formalize relations. Bahrain's foreign minister says his country is committed to the two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Speaking at the signing ceremony, Abdullah al-Zayani said it was indeed a historic visit of the Israeli delegation. He said engagement and cooperation are the most effective and sustainable way to bringing about lasting peace in the region. As for the signed deal, both countries promised not to take hostile actions against one another, but it did not include any reference to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Bahrain has now become the fourth Gulf state to recognize Israel after the UAE, Egypt and Jordan. Meanwhile, China has rejected the allegations by the U.S. media that Beijing had warned of detaining Americans. China's foreign ministry says the United States is calling white black and is trying to play the victim. In a news briefing, spokesman Zhao Lijian said Washington's actions have severely damaged Chinese citizens' interests. He said Beijing ensures the safety and legitimate rights of foreign citizens in China. Earlier, the Wall Street Journal reported Beijing warned Washington in response to the prosecution of Chinese scholars. Last month, the U.S. revoked visas for more than 1,000 Chinese nationals, including students and researchers. Beijing has reacted strongly to the move, calling it a violation of human rights. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has warned arms sales to Iran will breach UN resolutions and result in sanctions. This comes after Tehran said the long-standing UN embargo on arms trade with the Islamic Republic had expired. In a statement, Pompeo said the United States is prepared to use its domestic authorities. He said Washington will sanction any individual or entity involved in supply, sale or transfer of arms to or from Iran. Pompeo said nations that seek peace in the Middle East must refrain from arms transactions with Iran. He added providing arms to Iran will put more dangerous weapons in the hands of terrorists and proxies. Tehran can now purchase weapons from any country and has hailed the expiration of the embargo as a diplomatic victory. Now, Saudi King Salman bin Abdul Aziz has ordered to restructure the country's advisory council, Supreme Court and the highest religious body. State media said he appointed a new speaker and two deputies for the council and influential advisory body. Under the orders, one of the two deputies appointed is a woman. The orders further seek reformation of the Council of Senior Scholars to be headed by Grand Mufti Sheikh Abdul Aziz Al Sheikh. King Salman also appointed a new Supreme Court Chief Khalid bin Abdullah Al Luhaydan. He also named Ghayab Muhammad Al Khayab as a senior advisor to the Royal Court. Moving on, Japan and Vietnam have agreed to step up defense, security and economic cooperation. The two sides have signed a deal under which Japan will export military gear and technology to Vietnam. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga says Vietnam is key to realize free and open Indo-Pacific. At a press briefing with his Vietnamese counterpart, Suga said they have agreed on restarting business track travel. He added passenger flights between the two countries will also be resumed. Prime Minister Nguyen Yuan Phuc said Vietnam welcomes Japan to continue to actively contribute to global peace and prosperity. The two sides signed a deal in Hanoi as Suga visits Vietnam for his first overseas trip as Premier. And Prime Minister of Northern Cyprus, Ersin Tatar, has won the state's presidential election runoff. The head of the electoral body, Narin Ferdi Sefik, announced Tatar got nearly 52% of the votes. In his victory speech, Tatar thanked Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He said the world must respect the fight of Turkish Cypriots to live independently and honorably under its own roof. Tatar was facing incumbent President Mustafa Akinci, who received just over 48% of the vote. Tatar is a supporter of a separate administrations on the Mediterranean island. Only Turkey recognizes the country as an independent state, while other countries consider it part of Cyprus. More news coming up in this bulletin after a short break. Stay tuned. Well, ladies and gentlemen, news suggests in Afghanistan's former Prime Minister and Hizb-e Islami leader Bulletin HEKMATYAR has arrived in Pakistan. Now, for more on this, we are joined by our correspondent Sumaira Khan from Islamabad. Sumaira, what is the purpose and significance of Bulletin HEKMATYAR's visit to Pakistan?
Yes, Munib, the visit is quite significant, and the significance can be gauged easily by the coverage that is being given to this visit of two-time Prime Minister of Afghanistan and a veteran politician who's right now head of Hizb-e-Islami as well, and once again it's a very significant political party of Afghanistan. So it is being gauged by the coverage given to this visit by the Western media as well as Afghan media and in Pakistan, of course. He arrived at the midday, around midday, and he was received by our special envoy to our special advisor to Prime Minister on Afghan affairs and the ongoing peace talks that involve Afghanistan, Pakistan to a greater extent, and obviously with the Taliban faction. So our special envoy to Afghanistan, who was serving as ambassador to Afghanistan as well in the previous government, Muhammad Sadiq, received him in the early phase of the day, and then he kicked on his official visit by meeting the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. A few minutes ago, the meeting is just in its last stage, and Foreign Minister Qureshi welcomed him at the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and from the meeting, I can tell you a lot of things that are being shared by our well-placed sources as well. So the significance of visit is, rest assured, is quite high right now, and the agenda that is being discussed in the meeting is obviously of certain importance.
Right, Sumaira. Also, tell us the leader's schedule for this three-day visit.
Yeah, sure. The schedule is once again it's a very tight schedule for both Pakistan's leadership and Bulletin HEKMATYAR as well. He is visiting Pakistan along with his delegation, and they are here to discuss a range of issues, including very significantly DOHA peace process between the Afghan government and the Taliban faction, where Pakistan is supporting an entirely Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace process, totally owned by the Afghanis. In its true letter and spirit. So after meeting Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the Bulletin HEKMATYAR delegation will be heading towards meeting Prime Minister of Pakistan. Then President of Pakistan, they will be also meeting Chairman Senate Sadiq Sanjarani, National Assembly Speaker National Assembly Asad Kaisar, and the other important dignitaries as well. But there is a scheduled meeting of Bulletin HEKMATYAR and his delegation is there, which is with the prominent media representatives in Islamabad, and hopefully we are going to be there, and I'm part of that media interaction with HEKMATYAR, who is visiting right now in Pakistan. And obviously, we'll be having a lot of information with that first-hand available media interaction with him. And he is also scheduled to speak at security policy think tank in Islamabad. So I'll be sharing more details on that, because his schedule, a minute-to-minute schedule, is still not being shared due to some security concerns. So obviously, we'll be sharing whatever we received after the release.
Right, Sumaira Khan. Also, HEKMATYAR has very vocal regarding Indian efforts to sabotage the Afghan peace process. So is that expected to come up during the meetings?
Munib, first of all, in that regard, yes, Bulletin HEKMATYAR has been a kind of figurative, a kind of politician in Afghanistan who has been vocal, who has been sharing a lot of details, and he has been issuing important statements. In fact, not important, but I would rather say that shattering statements and kind of statements that usually no Afghan politician renders. because they have their certain interests with the Indian lobby and the development projects going on, and they are being owned in Afghanistan. They are being owned by Indian government and their consulates that are and they have such kind of influence on the Afghan political leadership. But out of those few politicians who have that courage to speak on those matters, sensitive matters that involve Indian interference and India's influence on Afghanistan's political system. So Bulletin HEKMATYAR has recently been issuing statements on that specific portion where Indian involvement can be much visible to the entire international community. But the meeting is almost over as far as foreign affairs right now. We'll be obviously getting more details on that. And I'm sure that that aspect has been discussed in this meeting, delegation level meeting with Foreign Minister Qureshi. We'll be obviously having more details on that in a short while. But Bulletin HEKMATYAR is basically here in Pakistan. He is here to discuss all the nitty-gritties that are linked with that Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace process with Taliban. And you can see you can see the progress being made towards first thinking of that DOHA peace process and now implementing that peace process. So I think it is the second highest political dignity visit to Pakistan right after it's been just 3 weeks that Abdullah, chairman of the High Council of National Reconciliation, who visited Pakistan, and now it's again a very prominent dignitary visiting in this regard, just to strengthen all those efforts being rendered by Pakistan to strengthen that implementation of peace process without any hindrance from any proxy matter that are really active in Afghanistan. And in this regard, we can easily see that when I spoke to one of the officials at the Afghan embassy in Islamabad, so they were kind of there's a different view that yes, he's visiting, but we have nothing to do with his visit. So we can see a little agitation at amongst the Afghan diplomats as well, that they are not really taking part in this activity, in this visit, like they should have been, showed their interest in this visit. But obviously, there are 2 media interactions with Bulletin HEKMATYAR. Let's see what comes next, and if he's able to share all the details when he's having these high-profile meetings.
Right. Sumaira Khan, also, HEKMATYAR has boycotted the results of the last Afghan presidential election. So how much power and influence does he still and his Hizb Islami enjoy in Afghanistan?
Yes, Munib, this is something that we can have long debates on. We had seen controversial results, and then after those controversial elections and results, although Pakistan accepted the results after US interfered, and they tried to calm all the political stakeholders there after this presidential election, and its result that exactly if we go into that flashback, nobody was actually able to accept those results, and obviously Bulletin HEKMATYAR was one of those. He boycotted the election because according to their then statement, he was of the view that we know what is the outcome going to be. So we can't say that his party has no footprint. In fact, his party, Hizb Islami, has strong footprints in Afghanistan's politics, because he has been he has not just been a Western politician, but he has been a warlord as well. And carrying that legacy, he obviously has a strong footprint.
Obviously, yes, Bulletin HEKMATYAR has a legacy to carry. Thank you very much, Khan, reporting from Islamabad on the latest with Bulletin HEKMATYAR's visit to Pakistan. Thank you very much. Now, moving on with other news stories, the number of global COVID-19 infections is approaching 40 million, with more than 1.1 million deaths. India's infections tally has topped 7.5 million, with nearly 56,000 new cases and 579 deaths overnight.
Just when countries thought they had managed to control the transmission of COVID-19, the virus has the world on the ropes again with the surging second wave. In the US, new cases are rising in almost every state as the country braces for a possible third peak. But new restrictions are increasing unpopular among the public. US President Donald Trump has continued his tirade against coronavirus-related curbs, making it even more difficult for state authorities.
Under the Biden lockdown, The lights of Reno and Las Vegas were extinguished. Carson City will become a ghost town. If he comes in, Carson City will become a ghost town. And the Christmas season will be canceled.
While recent data shows that the numbers in Latin America are dwindling, the effects of the pandemic are far-reaching than just death and disease. Europe is now the second hardest hit region after Latin America and the Caribbean, with over 250,000 deaths. France and the UK too are facing full-blown local transmission with tens of thousands of new cases every day.
Mira, la situación es muy adversa.
The situation is very adverse. There are areas of the country where people queue for 3 or 4 hours to get a plate of food from the community kitchens. The organizations are holding on at full strength since the beginning of the pandemic and without the increase of a single kilo of food by the state.
Meanwhile, the global push for a WHO-approved vaccine continues. The information shared by drug companies show that an immunization is highly unlikely this year.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 5 more people have lost their lives to COVID-19 during the last 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,659. The Health Ministry said 440 people tested positive overnight. The ministry said there are over 9,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of over 323,000 countrywide cases, more than 307,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 141,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 101,000 cases. In the capital, Islamabad, over 18,000 have been infected so far. Now moving on, Britain and the European Union will attempt today to breathe life into the stalled post-Brexit trade negotiations. EU Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier and the UK's David Frost will hold a video conference to discuss the structure of the talks. British Minister Michael Gove said the UK wants a trade deal and it has not closed the door on the negotiations, but he warned that Britain is well prepared for a no-deal scenario. On October 18th, more than 70 British business groups urged politicians to get back to the negotiating table. The European Union has ignored several deadlines set by UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The bloc said it is not going to rush to a deal which can be catastrophic in hindsight. Now, NATO member states are set to announce the creation of a space center in the Air Force High Command base in Ramstein, Germany. In an interview, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said he expects member states to agree to the plan before October 22nd. Stoltenberg said the bloc needs to ensure its missions and operations have the right support. Warning against militarization of space, Stoltenberg said NATO has no intentions of putting weapons in space. Now, rallies marking the first anniversary of mass protests in Chile have turned violent, leading to riots and looting. Masked individuals firebombed a police headquarters and jeered and threatened a Communist Party mayor. Tens of thousands of Chileans gathered in the central square of Santiago. Angry mobs attacked 2 churches, setting Santiago Church's spire aflame. Police fired tear gas and water cannons to contain the crowd. More than 15 metro stations were temporarily closed amid the unrest. Speaking to media, Interior Minister Victor Perez praised the peaceful rallies while blasted the late-night mayhem. He called on Chileans to settle their differences by voting in the upcoming October 25th constitutional referendum. Last year's mass protest over inequality had left at least 30 dead and thousands injured. Now in Mexico, the annual festival to celebrate the Day of Dead has been suspended due to COVID-19. Officials say ratcheting back the celebrations is a sacrifice that must be made to prevent more deaths. Let's know about this report.
If it's the Day of the Dead in Mexico, you are certain to see the bright orange flowers of the Mexican marigold, decorating streets, homes and cemeteries to honor the deceased loved ones. But that color will be dimmer this year as restrictions imposed to halt the spread of coronavirus will keep people inside. On the day, Mexicans keep alive a tradition that blends Catholic rituals with the pre-Hispanic belief that the dead return from the underworld. Cemeteries have also been closed to prevent the further spread of coronavirus.
Yes, of course we are worried. We can't go to the cemeteries, but it would be worse to have more deaths. The people have to stay in their homes. It's important for all of us to take care of ourselves. It's important to not leave home.
The dead are also offered their favorite food, pastries, tequila, and cigarettes to entice them to return from the underworld. Marigold flower is also known as the flower of the dead in Mexico. They are believed to have a scent as strong and sweet that can attract souls and draw them back. At one nursery in Mexico City, marigold growers said only 50% of the normal was being grown this season.
Right now, we planted 50% of what we plant every year. Why? Because we have suffered, because of the plants that we have been left with, which we have had to throw out. There have been many losses this year.
With cemeteries closed but more dead to remember this year, Mexicans are planning more private remembrances for their loved ones.
Now, European stocks have edged up over hopes of the US stimulus deal being finalized and a coronavirus vaccine by year-end. European stock 600 has gained over 0.5%, with banks adding 1.5%. London's FTSE 100 has gained fractionally. In Italy, the FTSE MIB has added close to 0.5%. The CAC 40 in Paris has added almost 1%, while Frankfurt's DAX has also edged up marginally. Earlier, all Asian bourses gained, with the exception of mainland Chinese stocks. Now in tennis, Russian Andrei Rublev beat Croatia's NAGORNO-KARABAKH 7-6 and 6-4 to lift the St. Petersburg Open trophy. Having won his fourth ATP title this year, Rublev is now tied with Novak Djokovic for most titles in 2020. The Russian emerged victorious after a tiebreak despite being 2-5 down. Rublev was flawless on his serve and never gave KARABAKH a breakpoint opportunity in the game. Russian third seed will now have to qualify for next month's ATP finals for the first time. Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal and Dominic Thiem have already qualified for the ATP finals. And now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.